It's pretty clear at this point that Netflix and the Duffer Brothers did not expect the Stranger Things finale to face so much backlash. They probably thought, oh, well, if we don't kill off most of the main characters, people will be happy because they'll be living out their happily ever afters. But that's not the case. There are so many inconsistencies, so many plot holes, and so much bad writing and acting jammed into the last 10 hours that people are not happy with what they have been given. Scores have been tanking, people have been talking about it on social media nonstop. And now the Duffer Brothers have come out and they've tried to clarify all of these mistakes, and really they're only making themselves look 10 times worse. I have a few different things to show off, but before I get into the topic, if you enjoy the content I create, check out the links in the description, join the community and my live streams, and consider supporting through Patreon or YouTube memberships. Now, they clearly made a lot of decisions with this show that most fans disagree with. Spoiler alert, half killing off Elle, but leaving that almost open-ended is such a slap in the face, because it's like they didn't trust their audience to have matured during the last 10 years that the show has gone on. It's like they thought people were not going to be able to handle a full-blown 11 deaths, so they left it open-ended for the fans who are coping, but really they should have killed off some of these main characters. The cast was way too big at the end. Really, it didn't make a lot of sense. And if you look at the teasers and trailers that they had released all those years ago for season 1 versus season 5, you can see the MCU slopification actually happen as the seasons go on and on. I am convinced that the show was supposed to end during season 3, and I think that for me that is where the show did really end. I liked a lot of season 4, don't get me wrong, and there were a couple of good scenes in season 5, but in general it just felt like they had already faced the big baddie, and the big baddie was way cooler, being this cosmic god creature who was basically formed out of the mist, versus them just turning him into a kaiju monster in the last episode of the entire show. But ultimately, right, there are a lot of plot holes, there are a lot of inconsistencies, and now the Duffer Brothers are trying to clear it up, and it's only leading to way more backlash, and they deserve it. So here is their answer to all of your burning questions. The Duffer Brothers explain why there were no Demogorgons in the Stranger Things finale. This was wild to me that there were no Demodogs, Demobats, or Demogorgons. The bats literally only existed to kill Eddie, and that was it. We never heard about them again. We never saw them again. That was wild. It should have been like wave after wave after wave, hundreds to thousands of these creatures trying to get them when they were going into the Upside Down and when they went into Dimension X. But their answer is mainly it's just that Vecna was not expecting this sneak attack on his home turf. Never in a million years could he have imagined that. They're there somewhere. This is the most retarded answer they possibly could have given. They should have just stayed silent, because ultimately it's just bad writing. They probably blew through the $400 million that they had for this final season, and by the end they were like, oh my god, this is going to be way too expensive to add thousands and thousands of these creatures. They could have even said that basically the creatures formed the body of the Mind Flayer, which I personally do not like that either. I still think that that is a cope answer, but some people have believed that online. But now they're just saying, nope, he wasn't expecting a sneak attack. Truly shows how poor they are at their jobs. Vecna fights for his life by himself. The Demogorgons are just out partying. This is the most we kind of forgot about them comment I've ever heard. It is so sad that Stranger Things has really turned into Game of Thrones. I'm more invested in Game of Thrones because I love the source material, and I think George R. R. Martin is actually an amazing writer when he's actually writing, but it just shows how lazy they were and how quickly they wanted to get this process done. And I know it's much tougher when you have these main cast of younger kids who are growing up. They want to move on to different projects, but you could have given maybe one more season, or you could have ended it in a way that actually made sense. It would have been better if you just had a million of these creatures fighting them, and then, I don't know, Eleven and Will and Kali form a freaking friendship circle around them and then have some explosion destroying everything, and then one of them just punches Vecna in the face and like sacrifices themselves because they grab onto Vecna's mind from inside his mind, and then they have to basically implode, and then both of them are killed. That would have just been better. But instead, he's impaled by a spike on his home turf, and they're throwing water balloons of gasoline and then flare gunning him down. It's just stupid. And there's a million other things they could have done better. We totally forgot about them and are too embarrassed to own up to it. And I understand that this series had a very large scale and scope by the end. I do not expect every single question to be answered, but if you're going to answer it, at least answer it in a way that makes it sound like you actually cared about your creation, not that you were like rushing to the end. The Duffer brothers have now revealed that the rock in the briefcase is essential to the Stranger Things spinoff, saying there are no plans for any spinoffs for Hopper and Joyce and Montauk or Holly Wheeler, and this is also infuriating because you could have just, I don't know, cut the first 3 episodes that were pointless from the beginning of the show, and you could have actually fleshed this out. It's like with the memory when all of the adults were younger in high school in the play. I would have loved for that to have been like half of an episode, and they're going through the different layers of the play. You're seeing things that are happening. You are really in his psyche. That's not the case. It was a 10-second scene, and then we are led to forget about it. And the fact that you're saying, oh, this rock is extremely important, but you're not getting the details until a spinoff is really just a slap in the face to the audience that they have. You also have the Duffer brothers saying 11 had to go so the other characters could move on. There was never a version of the story where 11 was hanging out with the gang at the end. For our characters to move on and for the story of Hawkins and the Upside Down to come to a close, 11 had to go away. I can understand that they wanted the sort of magical elements or the mystical elements to be dead by the end, but you could have kept 11 around. Or you could have killed her off in a way that made sense, but you didn't do that. There are also plenty of things that they did not confirm that they were supposed to, because they had said back in November that the Demogorgon is not telepathic and he did not open Will's door in season 1. Someone else did, and the final season will reveal who. That was not confirmed at all whatsoever. There was no mention of this. Maybe they just want you to believe that it was the Mind Flayer. I suppose they could have showed some kind of flashback with 11 though, and then said, oh, it was 11 for some reason in some way. The Duffer brothers also confirmed that they are working on this new live action. We're going to start working on it again on Monday. We've been working on it on and off. We'll take a few days off. It just sounds like they truly did not care about the way that this last season was going to be received, and it just was god awful. I think the major problem with this season does stem from the time skip. I think that if it had just started after the end of season 4 and hell had come to Hawkins, it would have been way better, way more impactful. But that's not what they did, and they are getting raked across the coals for it. The scores have been going down consistently. When part 2 had dropped, it started at a 79%, then it went down to about a 60%, to now 56%. I don't know if it's going to drop much more. Either way, though, it is the worst rated season by far, and this is because of the plot holes, the bad writing, the bad acting, some of the cringe scenes, like, yes, the gay scene that did not matter at all whatsoever, and we really didn't need it, but they, of course, wanted to ham-fist some diversity in there, and people on social media are being brutal, saying, you guys messed up and you should own up to it, and I do totally totally and completely agree. Love when my scary mist monster conveniently becomes a comically weak, fleshy kaiju so that the heroes can defeat it via literal video game logic in 5 minutes after 9 years of buildup. The fight reminded me of something out of Resident Evil. It really did. You have the sort of like tear on his stomach that 11 makes, and ooh, that's the weak point. In Resident Evil, usually it's just a eyeball, but it's the equivalent. And then they're just chucking grenades at it and shooting it and dodging it. And yeah, it is basically just a Resident Evil video game fight. You can go back and observe that season 1 of Stranger Things actually had kinda decent, dark, brooding, true detective vibes. Then each subsequent season, it basically morphed into Marvel Avengers universe slop. This kind of slow, boiling frog pot bait and switch is everywhere now, and it is so sad. It turned out to be completely different from season 1 and even season 2. I liked season 3 quite a bit. Did I love it? No, but it felt like it was a season that focused on sort of the atmosphere and the vibes, which I didn't hate that change of pace, but oh man, is it just wildly different now versus how it was at the beginning when they wanted you to believe it was a little bit more adult and intense. Strongest entity in the entire universe wipes out a military base, gets overpowered and defeated by a fat chud. Yeah, very interesting. That is for sure. Mike, do you really think that we were going to sit in my basement and play games for the rest of our lives? 4 years later, and he really is the one who wanted to play the game. So I'll definitely be keeping my eye on Stranger Things and what is happening. But now that the show is over and there are tons of plot holes and inconsistencies being called out, the Duffer brothers are coping and trying to give all of these answers that are really only making themselves look significantly worse. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this important and informative, make sure to give it a like, share it, and subscribe to the channel. And if you didn't, give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I'll talk to you all again in the next video really soon.